Welcome to another edition of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host tonight, Matt. Ronnie is unable to join us tonight, so it'll just be me and Contown. Let's move over to linebackers. We're talking with this group specifically about the off-ball linebackers, your two inside players in the 3-4 and the nickel front. I think, the consensus is Nakai Hill-Green and Junior Coulson will be the starters at those two spots. What are your thoughts on those two guys, as well as some of the depth that Michigan has there?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you talk about guys taking the next step, or who you're looking to become the new stars of this team after you lose the Hutchinsons, the Ojabos, the Dax Hills. One of the first names that has to come up is Junior Coulson. The expectations for him are really through the roof. I mean, he athletically is everything you could ask for an inside linebacker. He's newer to just the game of American football, being adopted, coming from Haiti. Coach Harbaugh mentioned this, called this out. I don't know if it was on In the Trenches with John Jansen or if it was at Big Ten Media Days, but he mentioned this as well. He said, Junior Coulson is the guy who just keeps going up and up and up. And, a lot of football burns a lot of guys out, but it seems to make Junior Coulson younger and more energetic. So Junior Coulson is going to, whether he's ready or not, have a lot of expectations and good pressure put on him this year to kind of be the leader of the defense as a true sophomore after starting as a true freshman. And he's certainly capable. He, despite earning a starting role throughout the season last year, also made a lot of true freshman mistakes. And linebacker is a very hard position. He looked like you expect a true freshman to look like. So how big of a second year leap, of a sophomore leap, can he make? That's going to dictate, in large part dictate how good this defense can be. That and then the pass rush. But Junior Coulson, fully capable. Just how close to that ceiling can he get this year? Nakai Hill-Green seems like a guy that the coaches love. Obviously was a starter last year along with Josh Ross. Throughout the year seemed to cede snaps a bit, and kind of a guy that has to reestablish himself as a starter on Saturdays, as a reliable starter. But from a leadership standpoint, from a personality standpoint, and just a field presence standpoint, seems like a guy that has the coach's trust. And I don't really know who's pushing him. I mean, we can get into this, but it seems like one of the bigger questions this team has is who's going to be the depth at middle linebacker. Is it Mike Barrett? Is it Kalel Mullings, or is it one of the younger guys? From a schematic standpoint, Michigan likes to play kind of a smaller guy in that 6 foot, 6'1", 220-ish range, and tends to play that player to the strength of the formation. And a bigger guy, that's your Junior Coulson. The Ravens tend to like that guy to be 6'2", 6'3", and a good 240, 250, more of a thumper. But if you can get a freak like Junior Coulson that can run like a deer, you take that too. So slim and thick linebackers, if you will, but those are your two kind of prototypes that the scheme likes to trot out there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because at least from the way they seem to be targeting them in recruiting, actually what will wind up being the heavier guy tends to be the more athletic one as well.
Yeah.
It seems like, whether it's Junior Coulson or Deuce Spurlock, I'm completely blanking on the kid's name that was with Texas, Jeremy Patton. A lot of the guys that they have targeted at that spot have been, either former safeties or, they play linebacker for their high school team, but they also play wide receiver on offense. So they're kind of the longer and end up being the heavier guys, maybe because of that. But they also tend to be a little bit more athletic, whereas the other position seems to be your true kind of Mike style. I think they, in the NFL, you want everybody to be able to run. So I think that's kind of what they're targeting for both positions anyway. Athleticism over everything. But I think the biggest question regarding the depth there is, I was trying to think of a way to say this earlier, because I'm not overly concerned about the depth, but I do think it is certainly a question mark. And it's a question mark not because we don't think Michael Barrett or Kalel Mullings are good football players. I think most Michigan fans would agree, like, that those guys are good. They have roles on the team. We're just not sure if they're great linebackers in this scheme. They're good football players. Probably both would be considered pretty good athletes, but I'm not sure either one of them is all that good of a fit for this scheme. So I agree. It'll be interesting to see if one of the starters gets dinged, what they do there. Because I do think I have high expectations for Jimmy Rolder and Deuce Spurlock, for the future of this defense. One thing I wanted to mention on the starters too, and I'm not sure if I'm on record saying this on the pod, but Nakai Hill-Green was better than Junior Coulson last year. I think Pro Football Focus would agree with that. I think, just from the rewatch of things, Junior Coulson's ceiling is so much higher. His athletic potential is through the roof. But in terms of actually playing linebacker, a more reliable linebacker, Nakai Hill-Green was better in 2021 than Junior Coulson. That being said, the bigger plays, the potential, all of that, I mean, there's a reason they're talking about Junior Coulson as one of the pillars of the defense. So I guess the reason I say that is because I have a pretty high expectation for Nakai Hill-Green. I think he's going to be just fine as a starter there. I think they're going to be able to count on him. I think he'll be a multi-year guy, maybe a potential captain even in a few years. So I think I feel very comfortable about the starters. Maybe more comfortable about the threes than the probable twos right now. But if we had to play either one of the threes, I'd be very nervous about freshman mistakes there. A couple of the other guys for depth would be Joey Velasquez, is a great special teams player for Michigan, great baseball player for Michigan. But I don't really see him contributing much at linebacker. And I'm personally down on Jaden Hood. I think it's getting late early for him. I don't think he's a great scheme fit. If Don Brown was still at Michigan, he might be the starting Mike. But Don Brown is not still at Michigan. So I'm a little worried about him and how he fits in. I still think he could be a good player, whether that's at Michigan or elsewhere. I haven't heard enough about him to have any type of comfort level with him in the game. And obviously that's final statement there would hold for the freshmen as well, because we haven't seen them at all. But sometimes if a guy's a couple years in, you haven't heard anything. Yeah, it's easier to write them off when you have the new shiny toys, with the freshmen coming in.
I do wonder if Rolder, we don't see Jimmy Rolder get the junior Coulson treatment a little, and bump not a starter but a second level guy like a Mike Barrett, or a Kalel Mullings, just have the coaches throw him out there and let him make mistakes, but knowing what his ceiling is. Because I totally agree with you. Coulson was, of the guys you would consider starters by the end of the year, probably Michigan's worst starter on defense. But, like we said, he looked like what you expect a true freshman starter to look like against high-level competition. And I kind of think Jimmy Rolder has a similar ceiling. I don't know how the testing numbers would compare, but this was a guy who, was solely focused on baseball outside of his high school football season through most of his high school athletic career. So took off in the recruiting rankings at the end. It was a straight up head-to-head recruiting victory over Ohio State. He ended up with offers from big-time programs in the SEC, schools that know linebacker play like Wisconsin. So it would be interesting to see if he, by middle of the year, is kind of solidly with the twos at middle linebacker as a true freshman, and the coaches kind of just allow him to get some reps in there and make mistakes, but to get his feet wet.
Yeah, I could certainly see him being, linebacker 3.
Yep.
By mid to late season, and Barrett being more of a package guy. I know against Indiana they ran that quite a bit, where he was kind of an overhang linebacker, which is what he was recruited to do. And then Mullins, Harbaugh said earlier in camp that he's every other day, defense one day, offense one day. I don't think it's clicked as fast as they wanted it to for him at linebacker, because if it had, I don't think they would be trying him at running back, even though Harbaugh has had a tendency of playing guys on both sides of the ball. But both Barrett and Mullins are huge special teams contributors, maybe even package players. So I don't expect them to completely fall off. But I agree. I think we could see Jimmy Rolder kind of in the rotation by the end of the year. That's it for the defensive preview for Contown. This is Matt. Thanks for joining us again. And we'll be back next week for week 1 preview.